All right, we are recording. Hello, welcome back, everyone. This is our sixth session for Gleanings of Baha'u'lláh, and with our facilitator, Peter Terry. Sorry, I need to pull this up. So the series we're doing is Gleanings from the Writings of Baha'u'llah, and this series is a 17-part series facilitated by Peter Terry. Peter, I'm sorry. I can't pull it up right now, so would you just do a quick introduction of yourself and then we can keep going from there? My apologies.
No problem. Sort of the least favorite thing that I have is to try to talk about myself, but it's okay. I can manage it just this once. How's that? So, friends, if you're not familiar with me, I've been in Baha'i for a few years, more than a few years. I'm 72. I currently live in California. Um, I've managed somehow to have spent more time in my earthly life um, studying the faith and other religions than anything else. I don't know how that happened. Pretty surprising, actually. Considering that most people have to earn a living, raise a family, um, and I didn't actually earn much of a living until fairly recently, in the last 10 years or so, and I also didn't raise a family until about 10 years ago when I had my first baby, who's now 6. No, that's wrong. She's 11. Mixing them up. One's 11, one's 6. And I know that's pretty crazy, right? 72 with a 11-year-old and a 6-year-old. Are you insane? Yes, I am. Certifiably. Okay. But I love the faith and I love the Baha'i teachings. You know, this is one of my favorite books, which I had the great privilege of presenting on for Wilmot Institute about 10 years ago. Just one class. And then now it's really a thrill to be able to do it again. So I'm going to now share my screen with you so that you can be looking at the text of my remarks. And so for those of you who haven't seen this happen before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share it right now. You're going to see this is the text for our fifth lesson. And the reason why I'm doing the fifth lesson is because last time we met, last Wednesday, we didn't have time to do the whole thing. We only did actually about one part out of 3. So I'm going to speed read through this section, and then we'll go on to 6, which I've rather lightly annotated so that it would not be overwhelming. And so to give you an idea, this is the Zoom component of this class. This course is meant to kind of reinforce whatever you have read or you will read about a particular selection of passages. The selection of passages has been made not by theme, but by approximate length. So about each of these sections is 20 pages in length. And it was necessary to have something of about that length to be able to get through the entirety of Gleanings in 17 sessions. So we're on 6 actually, but we're going to begin with 5. The reason why we were not able to complete 5 last time was because we needed to talk to friends who were taking this course about technical problems they had run into. And I have brought these to the attention of my colleagues. And I believe that we will be able to solve them very soon. And in any case, we'll be in touch with you about as time progresses. So for those of you not familiar, I've got an introduction here, which you can read on your own time. And it talks about how to approach the study of the writings of Baha'u'llah. And it brings up certain principles that he revealed for understanding his own writings. They are by far the most helpful thing that I have found in my life, because trying to see the faith through the eyes of Christian commentators or academic commentators or Muslim commentators is really kind of limiting. The way to understand Baha'u'llah is to read Baha'u'llah, right? That's what I found, and that's what I think you will. And you know what, Jeremiah? I seem to have selected the wrong text. Okay, the fifth lesson. Remember the one that you had to edit because this one was messed up. So let me see if I can get the other one on so that I'm not dealing with this issue. Okay, just give me a minute here. Let's see. You don't happen to have that text to hand me, do you? Do you have it up on your website? Because then you could just
Yeah,
post it.
it's on the website, so I can if you give me a second, I'll jump there.
Sure. Why don't you put it up? Because I'm not sure that I'll pick the right one. And yeah, we had one that had developed some sort of a problem with the text where it was kept repeating the same things over and over again. That wasn't very useful. All right. And apparently I forgot to delete it. And so, of course, I selected it for your conversation today. And so he's got only the corrected one because Jeremiah corrected it. God bless him. So he'll pop it up. I will stop sharing and he'll share. Okay. So you can share it directly. There it goes. So this is the introduction. The introduction, I won't go into it in depth, but as I said, it gives Baha'u'llah's explanation for how to look at his writings and how to understand them. And there's no other way. I mean, repeatedly in his writings, he said, if you want to know me, then you have to see me through my own eyes. And he uses various other terminologies, but basically covering the same point. Now scroll down, please, if you will, to the first selection. All right, and then now right here, the fifth week selections. Here is the summary of the themes that are explored in these selections. Of course, all of them are translated by the Guardian, and they are ordered in a very specific way, which is not necessarily logical. He does not put all of the quotes about one subject in one place. He may put some of them there, but then a similar themed reading will be found somewhere else. And I don't know why he did it, but it's very effective. Because what happens is when we think we've understood something, because we've read a few selections about it, then we sort of file it away as, oh, I understand that. And he reminds us that actually you don't. You are just beginning to understand. And so I'm going to come back to that topic later on, and you're going to see, oh, from this selection, now I see something different from what I saw before. This is actually really important training for us to approach. We're getting a request from Mike and Nancy to make it bigger. Can you expand that screen with the text larger? Yes, you can. All right. How about that? Does that work for everybody? I'm gonna take it as a yes because I can't see hands. Okay, so when the last time we went through 35 to what? That's going to be the question. So we're going to scan down and we're going to reach a point. I think we did about 1/3. So 35 to 50, 1/3. It's how much is that, please? Help me here. 35, that's 20, that's 25, right? 25 texts. So we want to go to from 35 to about 40. Let's say it's about 40. I think we went up to about 40. Okay. Now, I want to explain something. When you go through this text, all of the texts have the bolded quote from Baha'u'llah, and then they have in italics the notes. The notes sometimes are actually connected directly to the text, but usually it's completely separate. And those are my commentary. Those are a commentary that's based upon the research that I've done, the thinking I've done, and the aim of the commentary is to tease out the meaning in the actual preceding text, okay, to help us to understand more clearly. And the way that I do that principally is by finding where Baha'u'llah talks about the same theme somewhere else and explains it in a way that is particularly clarifying and helpful. And sometimes I quote other scriptures because he'll be talking about a teaching that is found in Gospels, that's found in the Quran. And so I will, for example, right here, I'm talking about, I've mentioned that there's information that this is actually talking about a topic that is in the Quran. It's in this passage from a particular passage from the Kitab Aqdas. And then I point out another tablet called the Ishrakat, which is found in the Writings of Bahá'u'lláh after the Kitab Aqdas, and also another passage from the Kitab Aqdas that help us to understand what is this all glorious station of the manifestation. Why is it so important? And in particular, the Ishrakat is very, very helpful to come to an understanding of that. So next thing, 38 is talking about progressive revelation. Most of us are pretty familiar with that idea. But the language here is very beautiful language and very clear and helpful to be reminded in this particular wording. Again, let's go on to the next one. We're going to go quickly through these so we get to the point where we left off last time. And here Baha'u'llah is identifying himself. You remember one of the unique Baha'i teachings is that all the manifestations in a certain way are one manifestation. They are the same. They are united. They are completely one reality. And this is one of the ways in which Baha'u'llah expresses this is this extraordinary passage in 39, where he identifies himself personally with these various manifestations, which there are allusions to them in the text which may not be recognized by all of you. And that's where you can go to the commentary underneath. That will explain that when it says, thou didst deliver me into the hands of Nimrod, that he's talking about Abraham. And when he says, thou hast allowed Pharaoh's rod to persecute me, it's talking about Moses. And these are that hopefully the commentary will be useful for those people who haven't already figured this out. Some of you undoubtedly have. Let's move to the next selection, which will be now 40. There we go. This is a very powerful statement. And I think one of the reasons why it's so powerful is because it's so brief. It's so brief, and it's talking about this concept of an emblem, that the reality of a certain creation is that it's an emblem of God. Okay. And if you scroll down, then you'll see what he says at the very end, which is really quite an extraordinary statement. He says, I was preparing to make reply because he's hearing a divine voice speak to you. By the way, all the manifestations hear divine voices speaking to them. There's not a single one who didn't. You know, it was identified as the angel Gabriel by Muhammad. It was identified as the Lord in the case of many of the Hebrew prophets. But Baha'u'llah also has this relationship with this voice that speaks to him. And here he says, I was preparing to make reply, and lo, the tablet was suddenly ended, leaving my theme unfinished, and the pearl of mine utterance unstrung. There is so much to be thought, you know, to when we contemplate that apparently we're not ready for it. Because if we were ready for it, then it would have gone into more detail. And that reminds us of the long passage that you find in the God Passes By, in which the guardian described for us the fact that when he was in Baghdad, that Baha'u'llah literally demanded that his amanuensis, his secretary, destroy thousands and thousands of revealed verses. He said they're not ready. Humanity is not ready for this. So we can't leave any trace behind because they're not ready. And if they're not ready, it's of no use. It's very, very important principle for us to understand is that we aren't ready for everything anytime. And even at the time that the manifestation comes, and it's hoped for that humanity will be ready for its revolution, we aren't. Most of us are not. And even those of us who are a little bit ready often take an entire lifetime to really come to that point where we can fully embrace the truth that he has revealed. Then the next passage there, which 41. This is the famous passage, or one of the several famous passages in which Baha'u'llah describes the moment of his recognition that he is a manifestation. And this happened in the Sea of Charles in 1852. And as I said, you know, this is one particular iteration of this. But there are several others, and they're listed here. Well, some of them are listed here. I'm sure there are others. And this beginning of the cause in him is in some ways very similar to the Gospel of John when it's talking about the baptism of Jesus, when the voice of God speaks to him for the first time recorded, in which he says, this is my beloved son. And that's the beginning of his cause. And according to John the Baptist, he witnessed the whole thing. And then he said, this is the Lamb of God. He recognized that Jesus was the promised one that he'd been talking about for a long time. So now let's go to 42. So this, let's keep going scrolling about. All right. Yes. So this is a hidden word. This is number 77. And the guardian specifically indicated that this is a promise of progressive revelation, that successive manifestations of God will keep coming over time because we need, that's why they're here. They're coming to help us. But that also each time one comes, there is a time when they have to stop. And that's why they quote this. At that moment, a voice was heard from the inmost shrine, thus far and no farther. Because only a certain measure of divine truth can be revealed at a particular time. And that is always going to be the case. So somebody asked about emblem, and I'm not going to venture to explain what emblem means apart from what you were able to glean from studying it yourself. And the reason why is specifically because of the words that Baha'u'llah uses to conclude that passage. He says, a voice came to me that says, stop, thus far and no farther. And he said, I hadn't finished. I had not finished what I was going to say, but I was told to stop. So are we going to learn more about the emblem? Maybe not. And, maybe we'll find it in another chapter. But I think the Guardian may very well have included this so that we don't have the expectation that Baha'u'llah is going to let us in on all the secrets. Now, in comparison to Jesus, it's vastly larger quantity of the secrets, the mysteries of God that are revealed. And that's why in the various gospels, it's talked about how, there are many things that I can't share with you now, but when I come, then he who is the Spirit of truth will reveal to you all truth. But all truth is absolutely impossible for human beings to understand. So all truth is really a way of saying more truth, a lot more truth. Okay. And we're going to get that every single time that a manifestation comes, but particularly with Baha'u'llah. And we'll get to that later on. So now we have 43. 43. This is a very interesting passage in which he is referring to a member of the family of the Bab as being someone who is branched from my ancient stock, which means he's my son. That's actually really an important statement, because normally we understand the descendants of Baha'u'llah to be limited to men who descended from him by bloodline, they were actually his children. But here we have this really interesting thing where he is addressing one of the Afnan members of the family of the Bab in that same way. And very important is what he tells him to do. He says, the day of service is now come. Arise for the triumph of my cause, and through the power of thine utterance subdue the hearts of men. That's what he's getting. This is what the member of this illustrious family of the Bab is told to do, is to go teach. And this is going to be reiterated many, many times in the Gleanings. It's almost as if it could certainly be regarded as one of the most important themes of the entire book, and therefore the revelation of Baha'u'llah, because we are indispensable. If we do not arise for the triumph of the cause, it won't triumph. We can't conceive that God is going to do everything for us. Humanity has been given free will so that we can rise up and do the right thing, and that it really will make a difference. And so the world order of Baha'u'llah is going to be built by us with the help with the guidance from God. We're indispensable. And that's really such a message for all of us to give. Let's move on to the next thing, because I'm just going over the passages that we've already done. Yes. And as you will see, sometimes you go and you'll go through and you'll think, what is this guy doing? He just goes on and on and on. Okay. Now, there's no, one of the nice things is you're not taking this for credit. You're not paying for this, and you don't have to read it all at one time. Take your time, read. You may find that the commentaries are useful, okay? Because they're going to refer to the same subject that the actual excerpt translated by the Guardian refers to. And the whole idea is for us to have as deep an understanding of that passage as possible. But take your time, do it whatever way you want. Right. This passage is a really terrific passage, because what is it talking? It's about, what do we need to do? What do we need to do in terms of our collective responsibilities as people who live in a domain, who live in a nation, who live in a relationship with each other. And that's, because this is one of the attributes of the Bahá'í revelation, is we're called upon to an individual responsibility, which is summed up here by consort with the followers of all religions in a spirit of friendliness and fellowship. That's each one of us. That's each one of us. And he says that whatsoever hath led the children of men to shun one another and hath caused dissensions and divisions amongst them, hath through the revelation of these words been nullified and abolished. Okay, that is one of the core principles of Baha'u'llah. And it's so important that he says that those people who really understand this principle have reached the highest station that human beings can reach. He says that in the Epistles of the Son of the Wolf. If you will, I cite it in one of the paragraphs here. But the other thing, which is reinforcing and just as important, actually, as the individual responsibility, is our collective responsibility. Because our collective responsibility is to recognize that what really matters now is our world citizenship and our service to humanity as a whole. In fact, in the Kitab-i-Aqdas, Baha'u'llah talks about how the local spiritual assembly, which is called the House of Justice, he says in every city, a House of Justice will be established. He says the responsibility of the House of Justice at this local level is to serve humanity. See, we're all of us. We're to serve humanity, not just our local interests, not just what we feel like doing in our little town, the world. And this is how he summarizes this principle. It is not his to boast who loveth his country, but it is his who loveth the world. Now let's move on to the next passage, which is about justice. You know, all of us have our personal definitions of justice. Baha'u'llah defines what the people of justice are, and we're supposed to be the people of justice. And it tells us what we're supposed to do. And I think this is one of the most important passages for us in this day and age because of the endless discussions about what is just and what is unjust. When he says the brightness of the fire of your love will no doubt fuse and unify the contending peoples and kindreds of the earth, whilst the fierceness of the flame of enmity and hatred cannot but resolve in strife and ruin. That's our job. That's what the people of justice are supposed to do. It's funny because we sometimes think that justice means that, we're going to punish all the bad people and, praise all the good people. Well, there is an element of that, but really the most important thing is establishing universal love on the planet, because you can't really get rid of all the bad people, and all of us have been bad at some point or another. And I don't think we wish to, in effect, sort of be eliminated simply because we've done some bad things. The whole point really is that it is love that is going to establish the unity of mankind. Now, I'm going to ask you to keep scrolling because we're almost at the point where we're taking over from where we were. Yes, just a quick mention of that. Just this particular passage here that's quoted above. And let me see what number is that. When you scroll up for just a second, Jeremiah, I want to see what number it is. Oh, I see. I see. It's part of a larger section. It's a paragraph that's part of this section, and it comes after all of the people of justice. Okay. All right. And in that, he's talking about true liberty. And true liberty is defined in the Kitab-i-Aqdas. You don't have to go and look for it in the dictionary or, try to figure it out for yourself. It's not necessary. Baha'u'llah likes to explain his teachings in great detail with great clarity, and he does. The Kitab-i-Aqdas tells us exactly what true liberty is. And true liberty is actually the opposite of what most people think liberty means. Liberty, most people understand it as each individual can do whatever they want without there being any negative consequences. So you have almost unlimited choice. And Baha'u'llah says, no, true liberty is in submission to the will of God. Very radical, different understanding of here are his words. True liberty consisteth in man's submission unto my commandments, little as ye know it. So let's go to the next one. All right. And as you can see, lots of notes for you to consider. Let's see. Let's go on to how close are we to 50? We should be close to 50 pretty soon. Uh-huh. Oh, okay. Well, we're starting 4. Okay, let's go down. Okay. Okay. Oh, this is a marvelous one. This is a marvelous one because this is a very graphic description of how Baha'u'llah is clearly not one of the learned. And how do you know that? Because he doesn't look like one. Because in Iran at that time, if you were a learned man, and first of all, the only learning they ever respected at that time was to have a learning of a religious nature. Then you had a certain cut of beard, and you wore a certain hat, and you wore a certain robe, and everybody could tell who you were. And it's sort of like that gown that you put on when you get your degree from as a bachelor's, master's, or a PhD. You have a big ceremony, you put on that gown. But except they wore the gown all the time afterwards. You know, this is permanent. And he points out, I don't look anything like these guys. And that's okay. And you shouldn't be concerned about it. And there's a wonderful quote from Dawnbreakers in which somebody else notices that he's not one of us. It's great. In particular, the length of his hair, the cut of his beard, and the kind of head covering he wore, and the style of his garments. I mean, clearly, he's not one of us, okay? And this was, of course, very upsetting because he's claiming to have knowledge, and he turned out he was demonstrating that he had knowledge and wisdom that far exceeded any of the clergy who were there with all of their training and learning. Let's go down to the next section. Yeah, this is more another passage who's talking about the same issue, okay, of, well, but Baha'u'llah is not one of us, he's not a Sufi sheikh, he doesn't lead a Sufi community, he doesn't lead a religious community, he's not an expert in the law. Well, how can we trust him? Well, the reality is none of the manifestations were anything of the kind, and they had any knowledge. It was knowledge from God, and that was the whole point, was you're getting something from God, your creator, and it's much more reliable in every way than what you're hearing from these people who don't have even the lack of they don't have even the humility to recognize how little they know in front of somebody who has infinite knowledge. Now we're up to 45, and which briefly we'll go through that. This is where Baha'u'llah identifies that the manifestation of God, including himself, has consented to suffer in order to set us free. This is a theme that you've heard many times from Christians. Christians really understand that this is what Jesus was coming for, is to set mankind free, and that he had to suffer to do that. That was what was necessary to bring this into existence. And Baha'u'llah says the same thing. Let's move on to the next. Of course, when you recognize that all of the manifestations have suffered for us, then we're all the same. We're all members of one religion. You recognize that the unity of religion is not just a theory, it's a reality. And that reality is going to create a world civilization. And here, this is a very plangent, very sad, in a sense, a statement of Baha'u'llah, but it's very important for us to recognize. we have to understand what he says here very clearly. I sorrow not for the burden of my imprisonment, neither do I grieve over my abasement or the tribulation I suffer at the hands of mine enemies. None of these physical sufferings that he endured actually make him sad. Over and over he says, I am do this with praise of God. When I suffer for the cause of God, I am honored by this opportunity to serve my Lord. He says, what hurts me is when people who associate themselves with my cause do bad things. This is how he puts it. In this passage, there are many more. My sorrows are for those who have involved themselves in their corrupt passions and claim to be associated with the faith of God, the gracious, the all-praised. I don't think that any I can read that without reflecting very carefully about their own actions, because we hurt him when we don't rise to the standards he has revealed. Now let's go on to 47. 47. Oh, this is a passage which is sort of a complement to the other one that was cited, in which he was relating all of these manifestations to himself. In this passage, he does it in a sense all even more personally by saying, if you want to crucify Jesus, come get me. Deal with me as you wish, for I have vowed to lay down my life in the path of God. And he says the same thing about those who would kill Muhammad, and those who would kill the imams, the 12 imams, and the Bab. So again, he's taking this unity of the manifestations and explaining to us that it means something very, very important, because each one of those manifestations is suffering for our sake, and they have done it willingly. Let's go to the next one. Yes, and here this is 48, and in this one, he's talking about this great love that he has for anybody who sacrifices for the faith, and actually is martyred for the faith. And as you know, it's written in the Bible histories that 20,000 of our fellow believers were killed during the lifetime of the Bahá'u'lláh. 20,000 people died, but they didn't die in vain, because they gave the ultimate sacrifice. And in that, giving that ultimate sacrifice, they have blessed humanity. And that's a mystery which we maybe can never fully understand, but we can certainly try to understand that. And this is not a statement that is talking about how unfair it was that they were killed, or how awful it was, or how I miss them so much. Although all of those are human reactions, and we all experience those. The reaction that he is revealing to us is that how blessed that sacrifice was, and how it has led to glory for those souls. Those souls are in the highest realms of the next world because they gave everything. They sacrificed everything. Let's go to 49. This is one of the many passages in which he's responding to those people who like to say that the manifestation of God is claiming to be God. Because he says, no, the manifestation of God is two things. He's a human being. And when he looks at himself as a human being, he says, I'm of no significance at all. I'm just another person. I'm not special. And then, but there's his other natures, the nature that's given to him and revealed through him by God. And that nature is the closest we ever come to God. So it's very important for us to see those two things. And this is actually a teaching that's found in some other religions. It's not, but they usually think that it only applies to their manifestation. Christians believe that this applied to Jesus alone. And Hindus will believe the same thing about him, about Krishna, that it refers to Krishna. And Baha'is recognize that it refers to all of the manifestations. And hence, what a powerful message this is for the world to understand, because it brings us all together. Now, 50. I don't think I wrote any notes on this one because it was so straightforward. It was like, come on. Don't. It was saying for those people who criticize the faith and say it didn't come at the right time. Okay. And he's deliberately speaking to the Babis who are saying that certain prophecies that are found in the Persian Bayan, which they interpreted literally, indicated that the promised one of the Bab would not arrive for either 1500 or 2001 years. He says no. Of course that's not the meaning. He's throughout the Persian Bayan, he's prophesying that him whom God shall make manifest is going to come very soon. And in fact, in some of his writings, he said it's going to be either during the year 9 or the year 19. That's 9 or 19 years after 1844. We're talking about really close soon. But then his beautiful argument is whether too soon or too late, whether you think, this revelation came too soon or too late, the evidences of his effulgent glory are now actually manifest. This wonderful statement. The proof of the pudding is in eating. The proof that Baha'u'llah actually has appeared are the evidences of his glory. And this is a real study for Baha'is to do, is for us to recognize what are the evidences of Baha'u'llah's glory that should be convincing to humanity, that should be read and understood and then change people's lives. Because if we don't know what they are and we don't know how to communicate them to other people, then how are they supposed to find them? So now I'm going to, I want you to say goodbye to this document, and I'm going to put up the document that's supposed to be for today. Okay? Now, just give me a moment here. Now, in the meantime, I'm going to give you, because it's going to take me like, a couple minutes to do this. I'm going to, now, how come? Oh yeah, because I'm still sharing. That's why I can't do it. No. Oh no, you were sharing. Okay, so I'm not sharing. It's good. Okay, so why can't I open chat? Oh yes, I can. Sorry. All right, friends. I'm putting my email address right here. Okay. And the reason why I'm going to do it is because I'm going to ask you to do this as a gesture of friendship. I want to say the reason why I'm sharing my email is because I want you to communicate with me. I want you to write me. I want you to tell me about things that I say that are helpful, things that I say that are not helpful, that the commentary that I've written, if there's something in it that you really liked or disliked or want to know more, right? I want to hear from you. If we had a course, God willing, someday we'll have that kind of a course where we can feel like we're in one room together. Wouldn't it be cool if we could do a hologram or something and we could just all feel like we're in one place, even though we really are digital, you know? Then we can actually have conversations and you know, our avatars can actually have conversations with each other. But we're not quite there. At least we aren't in this circumstance. And so we're relying on the spoken word being turned into the written word. Okay. So please write to me, write to me anytime you want. Now I'm going to put up, I'm going to put this up. I'm going to put up the 6th session, which is today's. Okay. All right. And now I'm going to now where am I? Where am I? Jeremiah, I don't understand why I'm not seeing how to share screen right now, but something's happened to my screen. And I'm not seeing it.
You don't see the share button at the bottom of
yeah.
you hit
No,
the
I
share
see.
button.
Oh yeah, I see what happened. What happened is I minimized the wrong thing. Don't do that. It's bad. Okay, so let's see. Where is it? Why is it? Where is see? All right. Now, bear with me for a moment here, because for some reason my computer is not showing me what I want to see. No, that's not what I'm seeing. There we go. Okay, now, God willing, when I do this, yes. Okay, here we go. All right. This is funny. It's really funny how this app works, because it does all kinds of weird stuff. Now now, do you see my screen? It says Gleanings number 6.
Yes, we see it.
Yes. All right. Hallelujah.
You might want to
Oh,
expand it a little bit though.
expanded. Oh, really? Expanded. I'm
Yeah,
gonna,
so if you go to the little slider button down in the bottom right hand corner, you'll see you've got
oh,
up to
yes.
100%. Yeah, enlarge it, I should say.
Wow. Okay. Oh, no, that's a little bit too much. How about, is that big enough, guys? I hope so, because that's pretty big, pretty huge. All right. So I've
Yeah,
done the same introduction. I reiterate the introduction each time around. Okay. And the reason why I do that is because I don't want people to have to go back to find these comments on how to actually read Baha'u'llah and understand what he's saying. Okay. And then I also made an effort, an offer, and I want to reiterate that offer is that if you can think of other principles that Baha'u'llah gives for understanding his writings in the way he wants them to be understood, not the way we want to understand. Okay. To see him through his own eyes, please send those to me on my email and I will add them to this document. So here are the selections for this week. And these are, as you can see, very briefly, it's going to talk about the person, the book, and the revelation of Baha'u'llah and the proofs of his claims. That's going to be one of the themes. Another is a very interesting thing because it's not something that I recall hearing in firesides or described in books or even involved in discussions amongst Baha'is, which are the blessings that are associated with the places where Baha'u'llah lived. And this includes Tehran, Baghdad, Edirne, which is also called Adrianople, and then Akka, the Holy Land as a whole. And then finally, Istanbul, which was at that time called Constantinople. by most people in the West. So the Guardian uses the word Constantinople, but I put Istanbul simply so that you understand this is a modern city and capital of Turkey. Okay. So another major theme are the sufferings of Baha'u'lláh and the causes of those sufferings. Now, remember, we've already figured out what the causes of those sufferings are because he told us in the previous selection. There was a tablet in which he addresses that. Well, he's come back to that because the Guardian obviously felt that, it was important for us to encounter that theme more than once. It's really important that we get it. But I think one of the things fascinating about this, the blessings of the places where they lived, is that if we think for a moment about our own experience and the experience of the people around us about the sacred, so much of it is tied to places. You think about people going on pilgrimage. Jews go to Jerusalem. Christians go to Jerusalem and to Nazareth and to other cities. And they go also to Rome because the largest community of Christians in the entire world are Roman Catholics. And this is true of all religions. Every single religion, they go to these places that are associated with the manifestation of God. And they have religion. They have religious experiences that are, in many cases, transformative. And we don't know why. Baha'u'llah does tell us that there's nothing actually superior to the atoms of the earth in those places, but it's because of their association with the manifestations that they actually are transformative. I don't know how many of you have been on pilgrimage of any kind, whether, Baha'i or Christian or, Buddhist or Hindu or whatever. But if you have, you know what I'm talking about. This extraordinary feeling of being in a place that's been graced by the footsteps of these transcendent souls, the souls who are leading us to the truth, that are leading us to a closer relationship with the mission. So I'm going to go into this quickly. The first selection here is talking about who is this manifestation? Who is Baha'u'llah? And he explains this in a way. This is the first intimation that we find in the passages that are cited here in the Gleanings. That Baha'u'llah is not just the most recent manifestation. He's not just even the promised one of all manifestations. No. He is the inaugurator of a new cycle of human existence, one that will last for 500,000 years, and his revelation is going to be radiating throughout that period of time. Even though there will be independent manifestations that are going to appear, they will all be under the radiance, what he calls the tree, the shade of his revelation. And the Guardian will come back to this theme. He will select passages, but I wanted to point that out, that being the first one. And then, and you notice this again, how the Guardian does this. He could have done all of those passages that refer to that theme in one place. But one of the things that I see in his ordering of the passages is that it's too much. It's like, what if you are going to go and have an ice cream cone and somebody brings you a 5-gallon bucket of ice cream? It's too much. You can't deal with it. You cannot absorb that much. And the Guardian does this beautiful thing of introducing an important theme. Sometimes he gives us more than one selection on that theme, and sometimes he doesn't. So here in this passage, he's talking about this. He's talking about how in every dispensation we have this precious opportunity to rediscover the creator and the way that he reveals his cause to humanity. And one of the reasons why I think this passage is so important is because many of us who have studied the faith and been Baha'is for a long, long time, we have this idea, this phrase in our minds when we see manifest as the sun in its noontide glory. And what is it? It's from a tablet of Abdu'l-Baha explaining how we will one day understand why women do not serve on the Universal House of Justice. And Baha'u'llah uses the same term when he's talking about the truth of this cause. The truth of this cause will appear unto you as manifest as the sun in its noontide glory. Huge responsibility is on us to be receptive to this truth, because in both cases, it can be a cause of great division. It can be a cause of great misunderstanding and unhappiness. But on the other hand, he assures us it can also be the cause of great joy, of great insight and wisdom. So this is the passage. He's only going to cite one passage here where he talks about proofs of his revelation. Quite a long time ago, about 2005, I was completely consumed with this theme of the proofs of the revelation of God in each one of the manifestations. And I wrote a series of books on that subject. And from my research, I found 40 proofs of the manifestation. But then I found this passage of Abdu'l-Baha when he says there are innumerable proofs. And not only that, but most of the most convincing proofs are the ones that you can't put into words. So this is a theme that the Shoghi Effendi included this one passage. It's almost like a teaser. It's inviting us to actually dive deeply into the proofs of the manifestation, because this is such an important topic. We can't convince people of the truth of the revelation of Baha'u'llah unless we are acquainted with the proofs that he gives for himself. They're not our proofs and not our ideas. These are how he explains his own revelation and why it's valid and why it's necessary for our time. And here, this is a very interesting thing where there's a passage where Baha'u'llah is distinguishing between physical blindness and spiritual blindness. It says the blind, those who are blind in their eyes can experience what is visible in other ways. In this case, he says, though unable to perceive the light of the sun, are nevertheless capable of experiencing its continual heat. But he says the blind in heart, and here he's talking about the Babis who rejected him and thereby broke the covenant with the Bab himself. And the Bab said, if you don't recognize him whom God shall make manifest, and if you oppress him in any way, then you have nothing to do with me. Nothing. But he says they are blind in heart, and that blindness has made it impossible for them to perceive the radiance of this glory of the manifestation of God. They have true blindness, in other words. That's a very important lesson for us, because we tend to get hung up on physical things and think that physical things are impediments. Baha'u'llah keeps reminding us that's not true. Physical things are only temporary obstacles, and we'll find a way through them. We'll find a way around them. But if we have a spiritual impediment, that's much more serious, because if you don't address that and get through it, you're going to blind yourself to the truth. Now, by the way, I just want to point out to you something, which is kind of it's amusing to me, is that I choose certain fonts and certain sizes for the text that I'm citing in this document. But what I find is when I open them again, something happened. It's like there's some kind of an independent intelligence inside of the document, and it decides that we don't want to do that. I want to do something different. So when you see something that doesn't look like it belongs there, that's because the app or the whatever, the technology decided that it was going to do things differently from how I did them. And I just laugh and go and correct it on my own time so that when you get this document, which you will, actually, I think I already sent it out. Yes, I already sent it out, but I could send it again. That's another reason to write me. If you find that you are missing something, the text for this lesson, number 6, should be already available. It's been available since last Thursday, I believe, Thursday or Friday. If you can't find it anyplace, please write to me. I'll send it to you as a Word doc. Then you don't have to go through all the technology and try to find it somewhere where you haven't already. Okay. So here he's talking about a very important theme. We're going to see him talk about this theme in 2 different ways in amongst the selections that are quoted here. And here he's responding to those people who have claimed that Baha'u'llah wanted to become the king. He wanted to exercise leadership in a worldly sense. He says no, he's never aspired after worldly leadership. Such an important thing for us to understand. Now we're going to maybe understand why it is he doesn't want us to get involved in politics. Because he never got involved in politics. He doesn't want any of us to touch it. He says no. The world order of Baha'u'llah is going to come into existence through another process, not by all of the infighting and competition and hurt feelings that are involved in all of our attempts to exercise worldly leadership. That's not the way. And so here he's pointing it out about worldly leadership. Okay. Later on, you'll see the same principle evoked in a different way. Now, here's the first passage. It's number 55, in which he's talking about the blessedness of a specific location, Tehran, because he was born in that vicinity and he lived there. And that's where he learned of the faith. And that's where he was selected in the Siyah to be a manifestation, informed that he was a manifestation. It was in that city. So that city is greatly blessed for having been chosen by God for the appearance of the manifestation. The next passage, here's a continuation where he's talking about his sister. I want to tell you, when I first read this, I was astonished. I had no idea who he's talking about. And then I did my research and I found out his sister, an older sister, became a believer. And she was a believer throughout the rest of her life. She died in the 1880s. And she was not just a believer, but a believer who was greatly persecuted by her own family, because so many members of the family of Baha'u'llah turned against him, turned against the Bab, including his own half-brother that he had raised as a child, that he had brought under his wing to take care of him. There's the ayah. But many of the others also turned against him. And this sister stuck by him all the time. And there's a very interesting, I recommend that you go to Baha'ípedia and read that write-up about Sari Khanum. Um, so here's another passage that's about Tehran, the land of Ta, it's called. And that's because Tehran begins with the letter T. There are two T's in Arabic. This particular T is represented as having a dot underneath. And in Arabic, it changes this pronunciation of the vowel after, as a different numerical value. As you may know, every letter in the Arabic and hence the Persian alphabet has a numerical significance. And sometimes, especially in the writings of the Bab, those numerical significances are important. So this is another passage again. Oh, I'll just say very briefly. In this, he says such a beautiful thing about the king who will turn to the faith, defend the faith, and be a champion for the faith. And he indeed is accounted in the sight of God as a jewel among men. Upon him rest forever the glory of God and the glory of all that dwell in the kingdom of his revelation. Then here he made a prediction in the same tablet. He made a prediction that he says, ere long will the state of affairs within thee be changed and the reins of power fall into the hands of the people. For those of you who know something about Persian history, there was a constitutional movement, and for a short time it was possible for the people of Iran to establish a representative government. And it's possible that this could refer to that. But it's also possible that it's going to refer to the government that will come someday, hopefully soon, when the mullahs are no longer in charge. Because clearly, as long as they make the decisions, the reins of power have not gone to the hands of the people. They're in the hands of the clergy. And certainly Baha'u'llah never intended for that to happen. But he nevertheless makes this promise. The day is approaching when the agitation will have been transmuted into peace and quiet calm. It's so important for the Persian eyes to understand that their sufferings will come to an end and that will be a glorious day, not just for Iran, but for the cause of God. Now he's going to talk about Baghdad. And you'll see that I used an outrageous pink color to highlight the text. Unfortunately, I couldn't use the outrageous pink color when the published version of this, I think, gave you some other color. But the reason why I did this highlight is because I wanted you to see standing out is the prayers, which are called tablets of visitation, that Baha'u'llah revealed for certain places. This one is for Baghdad, for his house that he lived in Baghdad. Now, why would this be such a special place? Well, when you consider it was in Baghdad that Baha'u'llah declared himself. It was there that preliminary to that declaring himself, he transformed the Bahá'í community. It's described in detail in God Passes By that he took a demoralized and in some ways very gravely straying Bahá'í community. It was a real mess. It had descended to such depths. And that community was transformed by Baha'u'llah. And so when he declared, it was the culmination of a process of this transformation. So it is intended that people who visit Baghdad will say this tablet of visitation. And by the way, those of you who keep up on current events know that the House of Baha'u'llah has been harmed. The way he talks about it is injured. In one of his later tablets, you'll see this. denigrated, and destroyed. But every detail of that house has been preserved. And in the future, it will be rebuilt. And we will make pilgrimage to Baghdad because this is one of the most sacred places for the faith. This is a long tablet of visitation, hence a lot of pink text. Okay. Goes on, right? And now here he's talking about Adrianople. But in Adrianople, it's where he made a prediction to this particular Baha'i and probably to many others of what was going to happen to the house in Baghdad because it hadn't happened yet. That was to happen later on. And here's an important thing where he's contextualizing it. He says, to him we have written, this is not the first humiliation inflicted upon my house. In days gone by, the hand of the oppressor hath heaped indignities upon it. Verily it shall be so abased in the days to come as to cause tears to flow from every discerning eye. Now, just imagine the degree of spiritual capacity that he sees in us, that he understands that we are capable of seeing the destruction of his house as being a tragedy that caused us to fall, right? Certainly, it's a degree of sensitivity about those things associated with the manifestation. That degree of sensitivity is going to grow to be to such a degree that our very beings are going to treat new believers because we will be different from other people. Now, this is in this passage. He's talking about his prison in Akka, talking about Akka. And this, he says, this place has been transformed into the most exalted paradise, the heaven of heavens. So if we think that the shrines that are now in our Baha'i possession is the acme of our pilgrimage, we're wrong. Someday that entire city is going to be transformed by the power of Baha'u'llah, and it will become a capital of the world commonwealth. How do I know that? Because Shoghi Effendi says it. He says it in one of his letters that's in the World Order of Baha'u'llah. He describes the world, the commonwealth that will occur in the future when we have a world civilization. And he says the capital of the world will be the place, the nerve center of this entire world system of governance. And in another one of the letters in the same collection, he says the capital is going to be the joining together of Haifa and Akka, that those will become one city. Well, it's already happening, friends. Not that the spiritual transformation is there, but the two cities are becoming one city. And again, this extraordinary statement predicting that this will be the capital of the world and that it will be spiritually of tremendous influence, not just for the Baha'is. This is going to be spiritually influenced for all of humanity. And then another thing that is you find in this passage is he's talking about while he's never asked for anything, well, he has never expressed any desire to be benefited in any way from his services to the cause. He says he doesn't refuse material benefits that could relieve us from our afflictions because it's a blessing for the people who give it. He says, every one of our companions, however, will bear us witness that our holy court is sanctified from and far above such material benefits. We have nevertheless accepted while confined in this prison those things of which the infidels have striven to deprive us. And then he describes this beautiful thing that will happen in the future where those who rear buildings, edifices in the name of Baha'u'llah, in the Holy Land. This is throughout this land where he ended up living, that they will be blessed for doing so. Now, obviously, that doesn't benefit Baha'u'llah in any way. That benefits us. That benefits us because then we will have beautiful places of worship, absolutely exquisite, as he puts it, throughout the length and breadth of this land, noble, imposing structures, and dedicate the rich and sacred territories adjoining the Jordan and its vicinity to the worship and service of the one true God. Magnified be his glory. Then he says, continues that the prophecies recorded by the pen of the Most High in the sacred scriptures may be fulfilled, and that which God, the Lord of all worlds, hath proposed in this most exalted, this most holy, this mighty and wondrous revelation may be made manifest. Now, friends, if you ever have some extra time and you want to follow up on this, go look for what the scriptures say about what will happen in the end time. What will happen? There, you will find many references to this, especially in part of the Bible called by the Jews, the Jewish call it the Nevi'im, the prophets. And Christians usually call it the 12 minor prophets. Full of predictions of how the landscape will be transformed in the days to come. And that this will be a sign of the revelation of God that is transformed the world. Let's see now. And then 60, number 60. 60 is going to reiterate this theme that none of us like to look at. But it's because it's painful. It is painful. But you know, when you read the Will and Testament of Abdu'l-Baha, that's painful too. Because he's talking about members of his own family who not only turned against him, but tried to kill him. They did anything they could to try to take over his authority. And why? Because of his authority, he had literally, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not a million, believers who would give anything to him because he was the head of the cause. They loved him so much. They hated, the brothers hated that. And of course, this is not just them. This is anybody who brings shame on the cause of God. So he says, my captivity can bring on me no shame. Nay, by my life it conferreth on me glory. That which can make me ashamed is the conduct of such of my followers as profess to love me, yet in fact follow the evil one. They indeed are of the lost. This is some of the strongest language you can find in any scripture about the kind of behavior that God expects from us. Because there are two things that human beings get hung up on and overly attached to. And one of them is physical beauty, and the other one is money. And Baha'u'llah addresses them right here, okay? He says right here, he talks about our He is not to be numbered with the people of Baha, who followeth his mundane desires or fixeth his heart on things of the earth. He is my true follower, who if he that should be came. If he came to a valley of pure gold, will pass straight through it, aloof of the cloud, and will neither turn back nor pause. Now that is quite a standard right there, my friends. And the degree to which we take it to heart and realize how much more important the spiritual is to the physical, the better it will be for us. And then talking to us men, he says, if he met the fairest and most comely of women, he would not feel his heart seduced by the least shadow of desire for her beauty. This question of chastity is so important that the Guardian reiterated it very forcefully in the advent of divine justice. And he challenged us as a community. He said, we must become holy. If we are not holy, how will we lead the world to the world order of Baha'u'llah?
Question on this and its possible meanings. Can it be interpreted as well to relate to our integrity as human beings? That if we truly follow God, we shouldn't let these things, specifically money, any sexual desire, to cloud our judgment. We should make our judgment based on the facts, not based on someone's desire to change our mind simply because they're, again, trying to influence our decision making.
Well, of course, he talks about integrity, in other passages, and I think more directly than this one. And I think this one, he's really addressing our desires and the fact that Baha'is are expected to go beyond the animal nature. We're all gifted with the animal nature. We all have it. We all know it can get out of control. And the degree to which we actually master it through the power of the Holy Spirit and devote ourselves to the cause of God is the degree to which we will have an influence on other people. This is something that Baha'u'lláh says over and over in the passages about teaching. He says, you must be a shining example of the teachings. You can't just go and talk, In fact, he says, don't talk until you're living it. He says, and that's, I think these are the kind of challenges that we have to realize, just like, there's a challenge in reading the Guardian's writings because it's a high form of English. This is very exalted vocabulary. This is it requires that we can concentrate our forces in order to really grasp his meaning. Okay? Well, anybody who's actually read Baha'u'lláh in the original, I've done a little bit of myself, but I haven't spent a whole lifetime immersed. Baha'u'llah's language is much more exalted. Baha'u'llah's language is so exalted, the Guardian said that you cannot. Ultimately, you look at the forward that he wrote to the Kitabi God. And he says in that forward that what is the unapproachable task is translating the writings of Baha'u'llah. He says ultimately it can't be done, but we have to try because there's still millions and millions of people who can't read them in the Arabic and Persian. And so we have to give them access to this treasure trove of wisdom and truth. And consequently, you look at this language and it's so beautiful. It really deeply affects us as we read it. And it's only a translation. That's what's so extraordinary about it. But it's by our Guardian, and the Guardian was infallible. And he never claimed to be infallible in translation, but who will ever be better? That's the real question. I don't think there will be someone who's better at the Guardian for translating these texts. And what a huge gift that he gave us in 1935 when this compilation was published. Just think in 10 years, it will be 100 years. So if we live long enough, we'll celebrate together the 100th anniversary of the publication of Gleanings. This is an important passage here. I mean, all of these things are important, but this one I want to bring to your attention because we Baha'is have encountered passages that talk about a calamity, that talk about some really awful things that are going to happen in the world before the cause will appear and will triumph as Baha'u'llah has promised it will. And here is one of the briefest statements where he makes this statement. He talks about this, and he says, when the appointed hour is come, there shall suddenly appear that which shall cause the limbs of mankind to quake. Then and only then will the divine standard be unfurled, and the nightingale of paradise warble its melody. Of course, he doesn't mean that divine standard wasn't unfurled and he didn't warble its melody. Of course, it happened from the very time of his manifestation in 1852. It happened before that. There were some people who recognized him at a manifestation before he actually declared himself or had that experience in the Sea of Jal. However, that's not the point. The point is the divine standard will be unfurled to humanity, and the nightingale of paradise will hear its melody. That is going to occur only after a great trial will happen. Often we hear that word calamity, and we sometimes look around at events that have happened in our lives and the lives of other people and the lives of the world, and we say, well, that must be the calamity. Well, if we can actually talk about it, if we can actually objectify it, and then look at what happened afterwards, we know it's not the calamity he's talking about. Because he says that when this happens, humanity will turn away from evil. Humanity will embrace the faith. He makes that promise. And that promise, perhaps the most succinct and manner in which he made that promise was to the father of the hand of cause, Varfa. And it's published in one of the volumes of Taherzadeh's Revelation of Baha'u'llah. And in this passage, he was asked, when will faith triumph? And Baha'u'llah describes the various things that will happen. And all of them have the quality of being this calamity. But he says ultimately the calamity that will happen will result in humanity realizing that it needs to have one faith to unite all of us. And that's when they will choose the Baha'i faith. So if we feel impatient, I don't know if you're impatient, but I sure am. I'd like to see that cause of God established throughout the world today. But there's no point in being impatient because it's going to happen when it's going to happen. And it's going to happen when humanity wises up and is willing to unitedly turn to divine guidance. It's not going to happen in little increments, because every single time we try to do something incrementally, somebody comes along and steps on our heads. It's got to be something where humanity as a whole embraces the faith. And that's exactly what he's promised here. And here again, there's a passage in which he is describing all of the afflictions. But he ends with this beautiful statement, because he's likening his afflictions to the afflictions that the Baha'is, all of the Baha'is are suffering at this point. They're treated so poorly by their fellow countrymen in whatever country they live. And he's saying, my sufferings are much greater than yours. but look at how I look at them. He says, let not, however, thy soul grieve over that which God hath rained down upon us. Merge thy will with in his pleasure, for we have at no time desired anything whatsoever except his will, and have welcomed each one of his irrevocable decrees. Let thine heart be patient, and be thou not dismayed. Follow not the way of them that are sorely agitated. I'm putting that up on my refrigerator, or maybe I'll put it up over my bedstead, or maybe I'll put that up in my car because I get agitated all the time. And I need to be reminded. It's Baha'u'lláh who's saying, be patient. And he suffered way more than I ever will, way more than anybody that I ever will. Then he talks again about Tehran, and he talks about Akka, and he finally talks about Constantinople. But I'm gonna end it here because I don't want to. When you sit down to a good meal, and there's a certain point where you want to, lay down your fork and knife and say, that's enough of that.
And then we start with dessert.
Yes. Well, even with dessert, you gotta lay down your spoon, friends, I'm really looking forward to seeing you again next week. And the document for next week is already up, because for those of you who are able to use the Ocean 2.0 app, you've seen that it's in the form of notes, so that as you read the text, you can look at the notes, and there we'll see the commentary of them. And then also, I can make the entire text available. I can be on the Clearwater website, and also I will gladly email it to anybody who writes me. So, brothers and sisters in the faith, I send you off with love for a week, which I hope it's going to be a wonderful one. And I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Same time, same station.